We saw Dillon Gabriel go 11 on 11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11 on 11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11 on 11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dillon had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11 on 11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance, accurate high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle.
Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Brown's training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone periods. The throws were varied, a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure. While national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work, with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants. While other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines, it was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed week 1 starter with sufficient continuity while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations: high red zone, low red zone, 3rd and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Barry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines further. Install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a 3rd down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align: efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same: what more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation.
You made an interesting point. So I tend to have the drip, drip, drip. This was my Johnny Manziel theory, is that everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're young. But if I see 2, 3, 4, 5, then you've got a plumbing issue. It's not just you didn't close the faucet. So there's about 6 pieces of video in college where Shedeur was a little bit of a brat, whatever. Then there's the legendary cringy draft room. Didn't love that as a B prospect. Then there's back-to-back speeding tickets, both over 90, and a missed arraignment.
The NFL is navigating unexpected headlines after a former Browns coach publicly defended Shedeur Sanders in response to reports of multiple speeding tickets. The coach's statement has sparked extensive online debate. Supporters welcome the show of loyalty, while critics question the motive. Sanders now finds himself at the center of an unforeseen controversy, and observers want to know why a Cleveland coach is standing so firmly in his corner. The story is developing rapidly and continues to draw intense attention.
When it came out that he got a speeding ticket, I said it's not really that big a deal. I feel very differently about it now. Over 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, less than 2 weeks after you just got a ticket. I don't know if that's entitlement or immaturity. There's got to be some teams that are feeling very good right now that they didn't draft him.
Observers are focusing on Shedeur Sanders' recent speeding ticket, treating the violation as a measure of his character and sidelining his athletic, academic, and philanthropic accomplishments. The incident, driving 15 miles per hour over the limit in a borrowed Lamborghini, has drawn sharp criticism. In response, a former Cleveland Browns coach has taken the opportunity to comment, even though the franchise is widely viewed as unstable due to its frequent coaching changes and limited on-field success. By defending Sanders, he presents himself as an authority on discipline and leadership. The statement, coming from an organization seldom praised for stability, has nonetheless attracted considerable attention across the league.
You want to defend him a little bit. I thought this was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said you were out because of the speeding tickets. To me, that's such a minor thing. You were so high on him in terms of his completion percentage in OTAs, and I thought that was a little aggressive on your part. But with the speeding tickets, I got a speeding ticket the first night of the draft, my first year there. I thought maybe I'd get the benefit of the doubt, but they gave it to me anyways.
As soon as the former Browns coach defended Shedeur Sanders, social media erupted with commentary, resembling the volume of draft night coverage. Posts and opinions appeared within minutes, and criticism escalated rapidly. Detractors amplified Sanders' minor speeding violation, while supporters argued that such reactions were disproportionate to a single traffic citation. Shedeur Sanders received 2 speeding citations, and the minor traffic issue quickly drew national attention. Before considering the former Browns coach's response, it is useful to clarify the facts. Sanders, son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders and a current college quarterback, was twice ticketed for exceeding the limit while driving a high-performance vehicle. Commentary on social media escalated rapidly, with critics framing the incident as a significant character concern, even as the league has historically tolerated far more serious legal transgressions. Stepping into the debate, a former Cleveland Browns coach, best known for a tenure filled with losses and contested decisions, issued a strong public defense. He argued that 2 speeding tickets should not define Sanders' reputation or overshadow his on-field talent and community work, urging a balanced assessment of the player's actions.
I don't love it from a 5th-round draft pick. I don't love that it happened multiple times, but I do think that this is the first time he's been away from his dad, and there's gonna be some growing pains now. Would I sell my stock on it like you are? Not because of a couple speeding tickets, especially in light of the problems that Brown's quarterback room has had to deal with legally in the last few years. I mean, this is This is nothing.
The debate quickly shifted from 2 speeding citations to broader claims about integrity, growth, and leadership. The former Browns coach framed the infractions as moments for personal development and urged observers to view them in context. Critics responded forcefully. Some called for disciplinary action, others questioned Deion Sanders' parenting, and a few sought to discredit the coach himself, despite his professional record already being widely analyzed across the league. The reaction underscores an apparent inconsistency in public standards. Fans often overlook on-field confrontations, heated sideline arguments, and other significant controversies, yet they treated Sanders' as routine traffic offenses, speeding without evidence of reckless endangerment, as indicators of serious character flaws. If such minor violations were adopted as the primary measure of morality in professional football, many players would face similar criticism. Sports media amplified the story almost immediately. Television panels dissected Shedeur Sanders' decision-making, treating 2 speeding tickets as indicators of deeper character concerns. Networks aired detailed segments under banners such as red flags and road rage, repeatedly questioning whether the citations might affect his draft evaluation. Although Sanders is already regarded as a first-round prospect, analysts emphasize that NFL teams value discipline and legal awareness when forming final assessments. Many commentators overlook the fact that other high-profile players have faced more serious offenses without similar scrutiny. Throughout the coverage, the former Browns coach defended Sanders, portraying him as a talented quarterback subjected to disproportionate criticism in a culture that expects near-perfect conduct. His argument was thorough and methodical, asserting that the traffic violations should not overshadow Sanders' skills, work ethic, or future potential. Commentators point out that the coach's intervention was not entirely selfless. He recognized the publicity potential. One day he was an overlooked figure from a struggling Browns era, the next he was a trending name across sports media. The discussion quickly expanded beyond Sanders' speeding citations to questions of image management and narrative control. Critics demanded disciplinary measures, public apologies, team sanctions, and formal statements, yet their objections seemed directed less at the traffic infractions themselves and more at Sanders' high profile, confidence, and resistance to traditional expectations. In practical terms, Sanders' brand remains intact. The coach secures renewed relevance, and the episode supplies another headline in the ongoing story of modern football. The next time Sanders is seen in a high-performance car, the debate will likely reignite, focused not on speed limits, but on the broader culture of the league. Meanwhile, new voices continue to join the conversation. Broadcaster Colin Cowherd has already weighed in, offering his own reassessment of the incident and its broader implications.
Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders last night was pulled over going 100 miles per hour. All right, he clocked 101, 41 miles an hour over the speed limit in Cleveland. He will have the opportunity to fight the ticket in court. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was pulled over, whether or not that it was in Ohio or whether or not that it was in his home state. But typically when you're going 40 over, that's flirting with the line of reckless driving. Folks, I gotta tell you, I don't understand what it is with these young men driving at absurd speed.
Colin Cowherd's view of Shedeur Sanders shifted abruptly. Days after praising the quarterback's poise and skill, he appeared on air to declare that Sanders is overhyped, unfocused, and distracted by celebrity. The reversal was immediate, without any gradual reconsideration. Cowherd now frames Sanders' 2 speeding tickets as evidence of poor judgment, even though he has defended other quarterbacks facing far more serious off-field issues. The sudden, wholesale withdrawal of support leaves viewers questioning the consistency of Cowherd's criteria and illustrates how quickly media narratives can change when minor incidents receive outsized attention.
This is
Okay.
nothing.
Okay. How much of this is, Jimmy Haslam has his hands all over Manziel, has his hands all over Deshaun Watson, admitted it, man enough to admit it. I saw the reaction in the draft room when they took Shedeur Sanders. Pretty obvious it wasn't the coach and the GM's pick. How much is this team has 8 last place finishes in 13 years owning it. How much of this is we don't have a very good owner here like Washington, D.C. and the Commanders?
Yeah, I didn't love the owner stepping in and saying, hey, you got to take this guy in the 5th round. And I doubt they'll ever admit to it.
While Colin Cowherd urged teams to move on from Shedeur Sanders, former Browns coach Eric Mangini offered a more measured response. Mangini, whose tenure in Cleveland was marked by mixed results, used his platform to provide context rather than condemnation. Instead of sensationalizing the speeding violations, he encouraged viewers to consider Sanders' circumstances. A 21-year-old quarterback whose life is scrutinized both on and off the field. Mangini acknowledged that the tickets were mistakes, but emphasized that they do not by themselves define Sanders' character character or future. He noted the extraordinary attention athletes receive today, combining the responsibilities of quarterback, public figure, and social media presence. Under such pressure, missteps are magnified, and criticism multiplies quickly. Mangini concluded that any evaluation of Sanders should weigh the totality of his behavior, performance, and growth, rather than isolate 2 traffic citations as decisive evidence of poor judgment. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with 7-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created, the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft pick developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons Shedeur and Shiloh or two-way standout Travis Hunt. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention. Attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffaloes season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. that influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent, empower athletes, hold adults accountable, and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines.